Hello then folks, and welcome to the beautiful but rather blooming sunny Moorlands Farm Fishery. Grant Albert and his wife and family have done absolute wonders with this place since he's had it. Probably had it 3 or 4 years now. If it was closer folks, I'd be coming here all the time. But anyway, so we're going to be doing another Andy May's crash courses today, focusing on, you know what, even though it's come back up to 14 degrees, I actually scraped the van for the first time last week, folks, so it is going proper cold. So we're going to be focusing on sort of ground bait to catch everything swimming. Yeah, in particular, obviously, all the silverfish you can think of. A lot of F1s in this lake. I've just looked directly at the sun. That's horrendous, folks. Carp if they want to feed, you know what I mean? It's one of them. I'm not going to be loose feeding at all. It's all about ground baiting and getting him into the area and using my favourite mix of F1 Dark, Super Crush Expander, mix 50-50, which we'll go through first. But what I need to do first, and what you must do first, folks, before you even go on this line, is get some bait in, yeah? Start off away from it. It needs a good sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes. That's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to get my box, put some bait in. I'm going to show you a lovely lot round here on my side tray. So everything's getting measured out today, folks. So first things first, 250ml pot, yeah? I'm going to fill that with my ground bait. So really over wet, you know, done this mix loads and loads of times. Basically, it's a pint of F1 Dark, pint of Super Crush Expander, a pint and a half of water, chuck it all on, leave it in a bucket, 20 minutes, half an hour, put it through a 4mm riddle. Dead simple. Right, so to that, I'm going to put just a few dead red maggots in and a few casters. I've got them all in the corner of this tub here. Literally, that's all we're putting in, folks, yeah? Hardly anything whatsoever, because I don't know what the response is going to be. I'd like to think that they're going to feed. Obviously, well, I know they're going to feed because it's still pretty mild. I'm just going to put a few more casters in that. But, you know, obviously the colder it is, and this will work no matter how cold it goes. Even if there's ice on the water, you're still going to catch like this, folks. But just be careful with how much you feed, yeah? So that's what we're putting in. So there's roughly sort of 50 odd casters in there, probably 30 maggots. Dead maggots, but you could put live ones in. In fact, I'm going to put a few live ones in as well. Yeah, I'm going to definitely put live ones on the hook, and that's all we're going for. And I'm going to put that back in to the pot, like so. I'm going to put it in loose. Now, the reason I want to put it in loose, yeah, just give that a squeeze down, is I want it to create or sort of go over a big area. I don't want to ball it. I've got just over 5 foot. I don't want to ball it because I don't want it to sink into the silt or anything like that. I want it to break up on top of the silt and just cover a nice sort of, it's going to be like a dinner plate, I suppose, or something like that. It's going to break up almost as soon as it touches the water and go over a nice area. So that's getting cupped in straight away, you lovely lot, yeah? First thing we want to do is get that bait in. And I'm just picking a nice distance today. You know, I've just gone to like 11.5 metres. I've got my mark on the far bank. I'm going to come a little bit shorter of where my main swim is, just so that ground bait's a little bit further back, and that is just getting deposited right there. So you can almost see that just under the water. As soon as it goes in, it's sort of like going to create, I'm going to start expanding out, so it's going to be over like the size of a large dinner plate, one of my size dinner plates, folks, you know what I mean? And that's it, nice and simple. So bait's in first. We'll come back onto bait in a sec. What I want to cover obviously first is the rigs. Now I've only got 2 rigs today. As I say, I'm not interested in short swims, you know, feeding at my hand or anything like that. I just want a lovely day's fishing over ground bait. But then it's all about obviously getting your mix right, but then understanding when to top up. Top up is the main issue with like this style of fishing, folks. If you get it wrong, you can get too many of sort of like the wrong fish in your peg. Getting it right, and it's just fantastic. You'll catch the sort of like the right stamp fish, if you like, all day. The other thing that I'll touch on when I cover bait as well is like a little babby stodgy mix, which is when, you know, you might want 2 swims on the go. One like I've done now, but one away from yourself, sort of like, you know, on an angle, fishing at like 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and that's targeting more sort of like smaller fish. You will catch everything on it as well, but the little stodgy babby mixes with like lots of worms in it, pinkies, stuff like that, that's more for your smaller fish, but we'll cover that in a sec. So, rigs wise first. Now, I've got two rigs. Both of them though, folks, they've got exactly the same elastic on, because I'm expecting the full of F1s these lakes, folks. Lots of skimmers as well, lots of carp, but F1s for me This black, the slip elastic, is probably the best elastic in the whole wide world. For silvers, if it's just silvers, it'd always be like your 5s and your 6s, but the Preston black slip, oh my days folks, it just covers absolutely everything. Stops the lunges of the fish, it's not too harsh that it locks up or anything like that, it's got loads of stretch in it, but then when you get it back to your top kit, a couple of strips, gets job done superbly well. It's awesome. So I've got that through me top two, 0.16 mainline, 0.16 AccuPower. This one, yeah, 0.16 AccuPower on absolutely everything. Don't really go any lighter than that, not unless I'm on sort of like natural venues. You see how I've got that connected? Yeah, I've just got a little knot in my elastic. We've taken the Dacron off the bead. The bead's gone over the elastic and I've just brought it back down onto the knot. Dead simple. It's the most effective way for me anyway, you know, rather than using the Dacrons like you direct to the fish. Now coming down the rig, we've got 2 number 8s back shots, as I always use blooming back shots folks. And then onto the float itself, I've gone for F1 maggot in both patterns. So I've got a 414s for this setup, which is basically a bulk and droppers, getting straight down, getting job done. Then my other one, fishing through the water, that's got your tapered shotting pattern on the 412. So 414s F1 maggot, carbon stem, nice and sensitive, watch out bait through the water. We are at, so you can see there's 5 foot, so it's roughly sort of like 5'4", and that is set to the bottom of the body or something like that. Proper silty out there, you know what I mean? So I don't want to be going on to sort of like the middle of the body. I want to make sure I'm slightly over depth so that when the fish pick that bait up, I'm seeing the bite nice and slow. There's loads of line on the bottom. Coming down the rig then, so where are we then? So our main bulk is, where's that? 16 inches, I suppose, from our hook, and that is a bulk of 5 number 9 shots, and then I've just got 1 number 11 stot on just to bring that float down into play. Yeah, and then coming down the rig, you can see there, I've got a series of droppers. So I've got a number 10 dropper, I suppose 3 inches under the bulk. 3 inches below that, I've got another number 10 dropper. And then 3 inches below that, I've got another number 10 dropper. And then I've got on everything, folks, I've got a 4-inch 0.10 AccuPower hook length to a size 16 yeah, SFLB hook. Absolutely adore these hooks for, as long as it's not sort of like little babby fish you're after, roach and that. For everything else, skimmers, carp, F1s, it is a superb hook for like this time of year when it's colder. It's awesome, you know, you catch everything swimming on it. But really simple, yeah, 4-inch hook length, dead simple. The reason for the 3 droppers is, obviously I've got the bulk that gets the bait down there nice and quick, but then droppers are just coming in lovely and natural behind it, just straightening everything out. And the bites, I'm expecting little tiny dinky bites, typical F1 bites if you like, folks. So that's my first rig. That's probably, it's not the one I'm going to start off on. I'm going to start off on this other rig. This is the one when hopefully I get a lot of fish feeding, a lot of fish grubbing around in the peg, and I just want to get down to them nice and quick. That's when I'll go onto this rig. So we'll come on to the other rig. Just let me show you the hook length that we've got on. So we have got 0.10 to a 16 SFLB hook on, yeah? 4 inches tied, folks, by my own fair hands, yeah? On it, aren't I? And then my second rig, exactly the same, single 8s slip elastic, yeah? 0.16 mainline, same amount of line pole tip to float. We've probably got 18, 20 inches, something like that. Number 8's back shots just above it, but this time, exactly the same pattern of float, but a 412. So what you'll see me do with that rig when I lay it in, I'll be flicking out to the side, drawing me bulk shot back over my feed, and then flopping my float over the top. We've talked about this loads of times in getting that bait straight down to the fish. With this one, what I'll be doing is a lot more lifting and dropping, but then a lot more lifting the whole rig out of the water, laying it out to the side, flicking it out, laying it against the wind, experiment with that, and then holding a tight line because of how we got this shotted. So floats there, exactly the same. I'm not as much over depth on this one, just simply because I don't really want to be waiting for bites on this. There'll be a lot of movement on this rig, lifting and dropping, lifting the whole rig out. So I've just gone to sort of like middle of the body of the float. It's not like my more stable rig that I've just taught you through, where I will be leaving it, obviously lifting and dropping a little bit as well, but I'll be leaving it a lot more. Now, shotting on this one, we have got 8 number 10s on. So my last one, just above me 18 inches. And then it's just that tapered shotting pattern that we talk about all the time, folks. I'll get my fingers under that so you can see. So obviously a lot closer at the top, and then just gradually just getting further and further away with their number 10 shots until we get down to the last one, which is obviously 4-inch hook length again, exactly the same 0.10 hook length and a 16 SFLB. No difference whatsoever. I suppose the main thing with this one is, this is the one that you want to be starting off on, yeah? Seeing what's in your peg, seeing what's about, and basically just catching everything that's coming in to visiting your peg. Once the swim starts to, you know, calm down a little bit, you start getting visited by bigger fish, you know, bigger F1s, potentially carp, bigger bream, skimmers, etc. Then that's when that more patient rig, the bulk and droppers, will come into play a lot more. But this one, starting off wise, certainly when it's a lot colder and you're really searching them layers of water, you can't beat the tapered rig. We talk about it all the time, folks. You could possibly even though it's like just over 5 foot, you could get away with a lighter float. You could get away with the 410s, no trouble at all. And that is what I'd be on if it was even colder. But we haven't got that option today, folks. It is blooming boiling. So I've got my bobby hat on and everything though, haven't I? You know what I mean? We're like near up towards the end of November and it's still warm. It's just ridiculous. So then my rig's nice and simple. Next thing I want to touch on is obviously bait. Now, briefly touched on the ground bait. Now here's me ground bait mix. So you can see how much ground bait you get. It was basically 2 pints. So a pint of Super Crush Expander, pint of F1 Dark, chucked it in a bucket and then put roughly about 1.5 pints of water over it, mixed it all through. It looks like it shouldn't work, but if you leave it 20 minutes, half an hour, that ground bait, certainly because of this Super Crush, you know, it'll take on a hell of a lot of water. It'll absorb all that water, you put it through a 4mm riddle, and that is what you're left with. Yeah, so really sort of over wet. Now, you've seen me when I went out and cut that bait in at the start, my initial mix, I didn't boil it at all because I want to keep it loose. So as soon as it enters the water, it's going to start breaking up and it'll go into roughly that area. If you're on deeper venues, the likes of sort of Meadowlands, Larford or something like that, where you've got in excess of like 12 foot, the beauty of this mix is you can really sort of like bind it together and then that'll start breaking up towards the bottom. It'll still eventually break up, such is the beauty of that Super Crush Expander, you know, it will break up nice and fine. If it was more sort of skimmers I'd be targeting, then I'd definitely put the sweet skimmer ground bait in it as well. No fish meal content in that, but it's just got that lovely aroma with it. But for like these kind of waters, these little intimate waters that have got a lot of F1s in, along with everything else actually, folks, then my go-to mix is at 50-50 F1 Dark and Super Crush. So that's my main mix. Now, remember me touching upon, if you, you know, if you had a lot of smaller fish in your peg, or what I like to do in matches is have 2 swims, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So I'll feed one exactly like I've just done, and then on my other swim, I'll start off with sort of like half a pot of what just put in at the start, loose, but then what I'll be doing when I'm going into feed is just having a mix, like a little stodgy mix like that. You can see there's hardly any bait in there. I've just got a few dead red maggots, dead white maggots, and some casters in, but it's little tiny like little nuggets like that that you feed, really inert, so that the fish have got to come in and attack that bait. And all they're doing is just picking out, let me just put that down. All they're doing, when that starts to break down, the fish are just sort of like just picking off bits like this. You make that into a stodge, it's almost like fishing paste. It's almost like that in that it won't break up, even though when it's on the bottom, it might even go into the silt, but it'll keep the fish active for ages. It's amazing how, you know, how many sort of fish, smaller fish I'm talking about now, folks, yeah? Little babby skimmers. You will get bigger fish, but mainly for sort of like little skimmers, it'll just keep them active for ages. So they'll keep pecking away at that, and if your hook bait's around it, it's an amazing way of fishing. Works particularly well with, you know, really finely chopped worms, a few pinkies in there as well, and it's just great for them harder days catching fish. You know, obviously I've got it mixed up today. I'm not planning on using it, but I just wanted to go through it with you lovely lot, just on how well it works. So all I've done is just got a couple of handfuls of my main mix out and just added sort of probably like quarter of a pot full of water, and then just mix it back through again. You want sort of like that paste consistency, so as I say, so it's really inert and there's no sort of like bits coming off it. It's a fantastic way of catching them fishes when it's that little bit hard or it's small fish that you're after. And then for that we have got hook baits only, folks. As I say, I'm not loose feeding today. We've got some red and white maggots with a hook, dead simple. Got some worms, so I can choose between like a worm tail or the head of a worm, you know, if it's sort of like bigger fish that I'm after. We've got some casters. Got to take casters with you this time of year. Now obviously I say I'm not loose feeding, but obviously match conditions. If I wasn't catching, then 100% loose feed. You've got that element of noise going into the water. It will 100% attract fish into your peg. So I will start to loose feed. But for today, I don't think we'll need to loose feed. I've said it now, folks. I don't think we'll need to loose feed. I don't want to, because I want to keep the fish on the bottom. And that's what I mean about knowing when to sort of like top up. If you top up wrong, then you're either going to attract too many of the wrong fish in your peg, or you're just going to blow your peg completely. You want to, well, I'll talk you through that when we're fishing. I'm waffling now anyway, but have some casters. I would have some pinkies if it was a lot colder, some disco pinkies. And the last thing I've got is some dead red and white maggots. I love white maggots, obviously for skimmers, but for everything, white maggots, I think they just pick out them better fish, certainly when it's a little bit clearer, or when that weather's a lot brighter. And other than that, that's pretty much it. That's my go-to mix. What I would always say is make sure you keep your ground bait covered when it is really bright, because it will start to dry off. But as long as you make sure the first thing you do when you get to your peg is do your ground bait, and it'll take on all that water, you will not have a problem whatsoever. Not a pellet inside today, folks. Natural baits only. Hopefully it's going to be carnage. So let's go and catch some fishes. Should we just do it in one, Jay? Should we just go for it in one? Let's get out there then, folks, and see what's occurring. So remember, no pots on or anything. I'm going to go for my tapered rig first. Yes, we've just off that one ball of feed. When it's silty, generally you can see them fizzing. Not seen anything fizz yet, but I reckon it's been good sort of 10 minutes before we put that feed in. So I'm going to go for double red maggot or red magpie to start off with. Yeah, you can see that double red magpie. Just up nice and softly through the tip. And then let's have a go. So first one is going to be right on my marker. So flick that out to the side. I'm just going to hold a tight line to my float just to see what's there. And I'm fully expecting, you know, smaller fish to start with. If I go in and I don't get a bite, you know, sort of after lifting and dropping or laying the rig in, oh, that was a little dink on the drop. So this is why you use a rig like this, folks, yeah? So we've had a bite straight away, and I'm fully expecting little silvers to start with, you know, roach, rudd. I've had a massive swirl there. That was a fish shell. That could have been that same fish actually just swimming through. I want to start loose feeding now if they're coming shallow. Oh, bloody hell, folks. Yeah, I fully expect sort of like little babby fish to start with, maybe little perch, little roach, rudd, maybe little skimmers, something like that. But you could just as well go in and catch an F1 or something like that. So first things first, what to pick up on is toe. Yes, if I had a big amount of undertow on the water, there's a little dink then obviously we've been putting that ground bait in loose. My fish aren't necessarily going to be where I put that ground bait in. You know what I mean? If there's a bit of a toe on the water, then I expect that, you know, say if it's going left to right, example, I'd expect my fish to be coming a lot more to the right of where I fed that bait. But as it is, it's staying completely still. We had another swirl then off that little dink that I just had then was another big swirl. Big swirl! So there's obviously some carp there. That little dink, so there we go. It's first fish. That didn't take long, did it? Probably a little baby skimmery bob or something. If I knew it was like little tiny fish, then obviously I wouldn't be on this 8's elastic, yeah? This 8's is perfect for sort of like your bigger boeam, certainly F1s, but lovely fish then. You know, lovely sort of like weight buildery fish. And if it's that kind of fishing you're after, then obviously you've just got to be careful that you're not using too overgunned elastic. If it was just that, and obviously F1s didn't count, which they don't in a lot of these sort of like silvers leagues, then 100% I'd be going straight in with 5s or even 6s elastic. But we're catching everything today. It's just even like obviously pleasure fishing and that, just all about going out and having a lovely day's fishing. Don't need lots of bait, you know what I mean? You just need enough bait for the hooks. You had a little dink then on the drop. It's all about that initial feed, but knowing when to top up. So basically, ooh, that's a bite on the drop then. I don't want to be leaving it more. So obviously we're getting regular bites now on this rig. I'm going to say it's 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 or 6 minutes. If I've not had a bite, then what I'll do, I'll come back and top up. But that's with this rig. On that other rig, that heavier rig, might go 10 minutes and fish around the area, that kind of thing. You know, left and right, flicking it out, just to see what's around my feed. That's some out of that on the drop. That's a little baby fish. So obviously there's some fish there to start with. It you'd expect, obviously, quite an active mix, little baby roach and that, but it's all about getting bites, isn't it? Lovely, lovely. And this is where, you know, obviously experimenting with your hook bait, worm head, worm tail. Obviously we don't need to go down the pinkies route because we're getting them little baby fish on maggots, but casters, anything like that. Whatever you're putting in your mix with the ground bait, you know, just try that on your hooks. I'm going to go a little bit more to the right this time, just to see if there's anything on the periphery of the ground bait, if you like. That's another little baby fish, had that on the drop. Lots of fish there, but that's the beauty of this rig. I'm still getting small fish. In another couple of minutes, then what I'll do, I'm going to change rigs and bomb that bait straight down to the bottom, just to see what's occurring. But obviously if I was in a match and looking around and people weren't getting bites, I'd be more than happy on this rig, folks, you know what I mean? So this is probably around, I'm going to say it's a good foot to the right of where I put my ground bait this time. We've got down to the bottom now, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to leave it too long, 40 seconds, 30-40 seconds maybe, just to see what's there. And if I don't get a bite, what I'll do, lift the rig out, lay it in again, but go back over my ground bait. And this is how quick I'd, you know, look to see if there was fish around my bait. I've that little dink there, and in fact I'll go back over my bait again this time. There's fish there. Every time I strike, I get the swirls over, there's like fish up in the water. You can see like the patterns emerging on the water. So again, we got down to the bottom. This rig's lovely for, you know, seeing what's going on in your peg, catching fish through the water. Really lends itself to that. Whereas when there's a lot of fish there, you know, the little silver fish have calmed down, that's when that more positive rig really comes into play, yeah? Getting straight down to where the fish are. I'm just going to lift and drop that. So when I'm lifting and dropping, I'm always dropping it back on an angle. Don't just want to drop it straight back on itself because you wouldn't see the bites when you had one. So always drop it back on itself. Little tiny dink then. So we have got a slight toe going left to right, which you'd expect. Got a little baby fish there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change rigs already. See if we can target some of them bigger fish. You'd expect this, obviously match conditions, I wouldn't change anything at the minute, folks, literally nothing. Quite happy with that, getting bites. It's quite often the case anyway, in that, you know, you might need to feed the swim a couple of times before you get some bigger fish mooching around. Who knows, sometimes they'll be on it straight away. But, let's say match conditions or whatever, you're just going pleasuring, you're getting bites, aren't you? That's the main thing, but hopefully, just by changing rigs, you should get something different. So this time, bring your bulker shot back over your feed and just flop your float right over it, and it settles a lot quicker. Still fully expecting the odd little small fish, you know, just because there'll be a few there, just off the little bits and bobs of that ground bait. But we're giving ourselves more of a chance, obviously, targeting the bigger fish on the bottom. And the fact that we're not loose feeding, you know, I'm pinning the fish on the bottom. Oh, that's a big swirl. I do want to loose feed, folks, I won't lie. Especially I've just had that swirl there. But yeah, obviously the colder it gets, you know, these fish aren't really going to be reluctant to come off the bottom. So it's all about taking your time and pinning them on the bottom. You know, not causing yourself problems. Another swirl here, another couple of swirls there. Oh, for goodness sake. Yeah, you're not going to cause yourself problems by, you know, striking at false bites and wondering where the fish are and the layers. Just keep things nice and simple. So that's been settled for a bit. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a movement. See what happens. So I'm right over where I put the ground bait in now. If I let all resistance go, you see there's hardly any toe whatsoever. If anything, it just ever so slightly wants to go to the right, but in 5 foot that ground bait's not going to go that far. So that was a bit bigger fish. Oh, it fell off. I've hooked that off the bottom. So just pretend, folks, that I've come back and I've checked that bait. I know it'll be fine, so I hook that probably about a foot off bottom, 2 foot off bottom maybe. Now, obviously that ground bait's not all going to be eaten. With the fish that I've been catching, that little babby skimmer, a couple of little babby roach, some of that ground bait's still going to be there. So I wouldn't think about topping up yet. My maggot just creeps up that hook. That's all right. Yeah, I wouldn't think about topping up yet. Now, just had the first signs of bubbles, which you'll expect on silty venues, yeah? Now, obviously, we know there's fish in the peg, which is a great sign, just gives you confidence. When you do get a lot of fish in your peg, and I know I've got that float dotted down, which is how I'd always have it, certainly in the winter. But when you've got a lot of fish in your peg, certainly big fish, then it pays to just have a little bit more bristle out sometimes. So what I might do is, if I'm striking at too many false bites and getting the odd foul hooker, just take that number 11 off, just so my float sits that a little bit higher. But how it is basically how I'd have it anyway. Let's give it a bit of encouragement. Go on, encouragement. And just experiment, see what's happening. So we foul up that bigger fish. That's the second lot of bubbles I've just seen then. So there's obviously fish there. I love this style of fishing, just being nice and patient. It's great. But I said the main thing is making sure you're spot on with your, sort of like you're topping up. The fish will tell you. Obviously, if you're still getting plenty of signs and, little dinks on your float, catching the fish, catching the odd fish, seeing bubbles, then you don't need to top up. It's when there's no signs whatsoever, that's when you need to put a little bit more feed in. Well, if it was smaller fish, as I say, that's when them little babby stodgy bowls come into play, and they work really well. I think there's something big there in a minute. We've had all that commotion, and then all of a sudden nothing. So I say there's something large has entered the peg. See if we can entice it. Come on, the fish is. So it's been a massive difference in this rig that I don't even think I've had a fish on this rig, this more positive rig, compared to the, the lighter through the water one. Now, bearing in mind, obviously, match conditions, I wouldn't have changed off that other rig, but I just wanted to see if there's anything decent there, nice and quick, just to get straight down and into them. It's really the difference in the rigs. If you're doing it wrong to start with, that's what can happen. Obviously, that tapered rig, fantastic for catching everything swimming through the water. But when there's not a lot of fish, certainly on the bottom, feeding, then that's when that one comes into play. So I think I'll give it another 30 seconds on this one. I'm going to come back and change over to that tapered one again, just to show you. There's definitely still fish there, 100%. Another little bubble just come up to about a foot to the left of my float then. Oh, here we go. Yeah, more positive rig, wellied into one. Love it. Yeah, I might stay on this rig then. No, in fact, I am going to prove a point. I'm going to back onto that through the watery one. So if these bigger fish move in anyway, obviously it's getting down to the bottom ultimately, then these will have it even quicker than through the water. Oh, beautiful. Love this elastic for these bigger ones. It's so good. So obviously it took a little bit longer, but we've got the the targeted fish that we're after, bigger fish. Beautiful F1. Them are what we want, aren't they? Well, obviously not on a silvers match, but some silvers matches you're allowed F1s, aren't you? You know what I mean? Look where he's hooked as well. He is. I'm going to give myself 9.7 out of 10 for that one, folks. Absolute stunning £2 for F1. Yeah, boy. Beautiful fish. So what I'm going to do now is just show you that them little babby fish are still there, but because we've gone on a different rig, that's why we're not getting I'm not going to say minded by them, because obviously it's fish, you're getting bites, you're catching fish, you know what I mean? You can't be getting minded by them. Obviously in match conditions and people are catching them fish, you've got to go for them. It's pointless going on a rig like this and getting them little babby ones if people are catching them. But I just want to show you that them little babby fish are still in the peg. They wouldn't have vacated, but it's the fact that that rig that I've just been on, the more positive one, is just bypassing them. Simple as that. So I'll flick that out again. Remember with this one we're holding a tight line. Tight line to the float. But I say this can be the best rig in the world for F1s at times when they're watching that bait down, and for skimmers and what have you. It's just a great rig for catching absolutely everything. But at times you can be catching the wrong fish if you like. So from a little dink then, from when it's settled, all I'll leave it is probably 50 seconds to a minute before I'll lay it in again. I'll lay the rig in again. Hoping you can see it on that camera, even though it's a bit choppy. I'm hoping you can see the little dinks and that we're getting. And you see I'm just holding that tight line just to them back shots. Yeah, see that little dink then? That's what we're expecting, little tiny dinks on this. It's ever so slightly just picking the toe up more, this one, which you'd expect with how it's shotted. So I'm just bringing that pole back to the left of my float and just holding back. So even now it looks as though the small fish have gone, and hopefully it's just a case of them big fish have moved in. F1s, carp if they want to feed, you know, bream, skimmers, that kind of thing. Because in 2 layings we've not had anything. Shows you how quick it can change. Definitely still going to be some bait there. I'm not going to top up just yet. Give it another go with this one. A little dink then, lay it in a bit different. So I'm laying it in sort of with the toe. It's hardly towing it all, but I'm just going to lay it in with the toe this time. There you go. See what I mean? Them little babby fish are still in your peg, so you know, if ever it goes harder for you, just pick this rig back up. Yeah, pick this rig back up, go back on it, and 100% guarantee you'll be into fish again. Now this rig, certainly the colder it gets, and stiller it gets, and obviously stiller it gets, calmer it gets, the water, this rig, that's when it comes into its own. But for today's purposes, you know, with it being a tiny little bit milder, a bit of a chop on the water, it's the wrong kind of rig. So it took, what did it take that? I'm going to say it took like 3 minutes to get that F1 that time. When we laid it in. So as soon as I get to that sort of like, it's that 5 minute mark for me, folks. As soon as I go like 5 minutes without a fish, or without a sign should I say, that's when I think about topping up. So you can see how I'm laying that rig in, flick the rig out, draw your bulk of shot back over, and then you're fishing really quick. Nice and patient, nice and positive. I'm just waiting for them little tiny dinks. Certainly lifting and dropping, you know, keep a little bit of lifting and dropping going. And changing your hook bait as well can make a big difference. A little tiny lift and a drop. So it's probably been, I'm going to say 20-25 minutes since we put any bait in at all. Obviously we put that first pot in, that's all we put in, a 250ml pot with sort of 60 casters. Well, probably 50 casters, 50 maggots, something like that. So plenty of bait really. But it's something that you've got to leave. You can't just expect to go straight on it. A little dink then. Yes, you see how rubbish the bites are. So obviously that was just sat there, now it's just like nom 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 nom. So at the minute it's pointless loose feeding whatsoever. Sorry, loose feeding. I'm getting giddy now, aren't I, folks? It's pointless topping up whatsoever at the minute. There's still fish there. Yeah, as soon as we go, like, as I said, that 5 minutes without anything, that's when we can think about it. Tiniest of tiny bites, that. Rubbish bite. What a scoop that was, folks. You get that, JK? What a scoop that was. That is a nice F1 as well. That's a beautiful F1. Come out in a blooming net as well. But look at this for an F1, folks. Yeah, boy. F1 on the scoop. Look at that. That's getting on for £3, isn't it? £2.12, that one. Beautiful fish. Absolutely beautiful. Again, what was that in? That was in 90 seconds maybe, something like that. So no, not going to feed again. It shows you how you can do like a silly weight, but just be like really patient. Don't need to change anything. Don't need to loose feed. If I started loose feeding now, obviously them F1s are the best fish in the world for coming up in the water. Well, apart from mids, they'd want to come off the bottom. Now the trouble, like the colder it gets, and you start loose feeding, breaking away from sort of like what we're doing. First things first, yes, you're going to attract fish into your peg, but if you've already got fish in your peg and you start loose feeding, you're going to draw them off the bottom, and that's when problems are going to occur. I love loose feeding. I've done it too many times before that now I don't. You know what I mean? When I've got them in my peg, I'd sooner pin them down on the bottom, because as soon as you start loose feeding, they're coming off the bottom, you start foul hooking them, and you're just ruining your peg, because that will then draw the bigger carp in, and obviously silvers, matches, we don't want them, and that's what's going to happen. That's what I've certainly spoilt it for myself over the years, folks. I've definitely, when I've started loose feeding, is drawing the wrong kind of fish into my peg. So it's been far better just taking your time, using the ground bait as an initial feed, and then using your little top-up balls. We've not had to top up yet, and it's definitely been at least, it must have been 25 minutes, probably half an hour now, before we fed anything. That's everything through that one pot. Yeah, so two lovely F1s and a few little babby silvery fish. But how horrible was that bite then? Horrendous bite, that one. But it just shows it's F1 fishing. So like for conditions now where it's gone like this, quick get it in, Jake, yeah, flat calm, you've got to have your float like that. But when there's like odd bigger fish in your peg, and you know, quite a few fish moving around, and you're getting the odd line and maybe foul hooker, that's, or if it was a little bit windier, that's when you can, you know, knock a little babby shot off and have it sort of like it is now, you know, like 5 or 6 mil of bristle showing something. I'd be inclined to do that today when that wind's like it is now. But the fact that we're not getting loads of bites, just nice to coming in, seeing your big standout hook bait and nailing it. It's lovely. It is proper good. Definitely think you need something fish mealy in it as well, folks, in your mix, 100%. It does make a big difference. Obviously the fish is so used to it these days. And the beauty of obviously the super crush in there, very little food content, but you know, it's just got enough of that fish meal content in it as well, in the mix, just to attract the fish into your peg, but doesn't fill them up at all. Really is good. And obviously the F1 dark, well, speaks for itself. It's just an awesome ground bait. That just gives it that lovely, obviously the lovely colour, just really offsets it. Little lift and drop. You see, like every time I'm lifting and dropping, I'm dropping it back on its side. I'm not just leaving it, dropping it straight back down rather. You've got to drop it back on its side so it's falling back on that arc or cave. Ever so slightly, just pulling through. I think what I will do, just to show you, is top up. I'm only going to put sort of half the pot in, so like probably 150 or something. Half of that big pot in. Just to see what happens, because sometimes they can just wipe you out. You know, obviously I say you've got to prime it first, which you have, and then go on it and see what's what. But other days when they're proper having it, folks, blooming out, you might be topping up every sort of 10 minutes sometimes. Certainly if it's bigger fish, bigger bream and F1s, or certainly carp and what have you, you might have to top up a lot more often. But you can see we're just waiting that little bit longer now. No sort of signs either on the float. I've not seen any bubbles come up for a bit. You just get to know when's right to top up. I think that was a little thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back give it a little top up and then go straight over it. Now what I'll be doing in a match, I'd try this, you know, probably once or twice. As soon as I've fed, I go straight back over it, and then you get to know, because sometimes, certainly if it's smaller fish, roach, little baby skimmers, hybrids, things like that, they'll be the first ones into your feed. And then as it settles down, that's when the bigger fish will come in, because they're attracted to the commotion of the smaller fish. So to start with, try it straight away, see what happens, put your ball in, fish over it straight away. If it is small fish, then that's when you know you need to leave it sort of 5, 10, 15 minutes before you go back over it, if that makes sense. But I want to always try it, what happens in that first instant when I top up, which is what we're going to do now. So roughly sort of half the pot, so on this side, half that pot, yeah, and then we're just going to put a few casters in and a few maggots, something like that. Give them a bit of a shake. So we've got half of that 250ml pot, so like roughly 150 or something. That's not half of 250, is it? That's 125. Quick maths. You like that, folks? And again, just going to get straight on my marker. So that's my elbow there. So I'm going to come back a little bit and put that bait in. So it's got a slight toe on it, but nothing to speak of. So I'm going to go straight back in over that, which is exactly the same as what I do match conditions, because you've got to try it first, and if it wasn't right, then you know future times that you top up, you just need to leave it. So 2 magpies on, we burst that one, so we don't want that one on. Oh dare we burst a magpie. And straight on it. It's lovely now, and all that wind's going to die down a little bit. Perfect. So what I'd expect is little fish to be straight on it. Little roach, little skimmers, a little dink then. They'll be the first ones to that bait. And then usually sort of 5-10 minutes time, the little fish will attract the bigger fish, and then you'll be into the bigger fish. You just get to know. See, there's somewhat fishing on that straight away. Now, bearing in mind, I put that ground bait a little bit shorter of where I'm fishing. So I do like to fish sort of like on the outsides of the ground bait, if you like. I'm just going to let that float, toe through as it wants. And get one going through that way. But usually a little babby fish straight on it, and then the bigger fish will rock up. There we go, so a little babby fish straight away, little skimmer or something. And then within the next sort of like couple of goes, I'd fully expect another F1 or carp or something like that. It's lovely, isn't it? So nice. So nice. Just going to stun them a little bit. So lay that out, bring that bulk shot back over your feed, flop the float over. And don't forget to cover your ground bait. Don't cover me ground bait, folks. That's it. Right, that skimmer I had, just letting that float go through. I didn't move it that time, I just let it go through of its own accord. It's hardly towing at all. Bubble about 2 foot this side of my float then. So obviously the main bulk of your fish will be right in your ground bait, but definitely fish around, you know, around the periphery of your ground bait, left, right, bit past it, 100% that makes a difference. Certainly more so with skimmers, you know, fishing past your feed works really well. So I've got a little scale on my magpies then, so when I struck on that one, my float come round at a bit of an angle. I've got a tiny scale on my hook. My rig come back at an angle as if there was something something big there. Drop it a bit shorter this time. Something right over my ground bait. But yeah, definitely fish around it. Skimmers are the worst for it, you know, backing off your feed a little bit, but everything will do. So Just something's taking that on the drop. There we go, a little baby fish. Spat my maggots out as well. A little big guy, smack my magpies out, but it just shows you, yeah? So the little baby fish are the first ones to it. I'm gonna put double white on. Just give it a go. Certainly with it being bright, you know, I'm convinced colours make a difference, but who knows, folks? Or maybe it's just in my head, but I'm convinced colours make a difference. You see it standing out, can't you, there? So yeah, as I said, yeah, little baby fish straight to it. So I know that next time, you know, certainly I can match conditions. I know I've only got one swim on the go today, but what I do in my top up, I'd leave it, rest it sort of 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, a little bit colder, and then try somewhere else. That's exactly what I'll be doing. It's usually the case, but I've had it before where the bigger fish is straight on your feed, like literally on it. You know, you go put your ball in, come back, bait up, ship back out, and they're on it straight away. So you've got to give it a go in that first instance, but it usually goes straight away. If it doesn't, then obviously it's telling you it just needs little fish to come into that bait first to attract the bigger fish. I'm waffling, but it makes sense, doesn't it? You know what I mean? So, there we go. Double white magpie, folks, isn't it? Double white magpie. I just love it. Skimmery bobs. You see, like, imagine obviously proper freezing cold day, folks, and it's all about getting bites, and it's just, you know what I mean? Fish like that, catch them all day. 3 or 4 of them and you got a pound. It's just, I love it. So good. Double white magpie as well. We are on it. Nice to catch another great big one, wouldn't it? Yeah, boy. I'm not having to even move the float much or anything today. We're just nice. It's just coming into that area where that ground bait's gone in and having it straight away. Right, so around about now, this is when I'd expect the bigger fish to start creeping in now. Might still get the odd little baby fish, but certainly 5-10 minutes into like your top up, then that's when, but this is when obviously you'd be coming back onto this line now, kind of thing. Yeah, if you'd gone somewhere else, you'd be coming back onto your main swim kind of now. So that the you know, the fish have sort of like got a bit confident, got used to it. I'm fully expecting a decent fish soonish, if not this chuck. Maybe a bit of encouragement. Doink. So if you like lifting and dropping and only getting small fish, which can be the case, certainly with perch, then obviously just leave it. I think that comes down to personal preference and, you know, confidence. I just can't not lift and drop me, folks, you know what I'm like. I can't leave it. Just, there's no coincidence in most of my fish, you always catch just after you've moved it. So that's drifted probably a foot to the right of where I've fed that ground bait now. Maybe a little bit more. Oh, we had a little dink. Oh, it's a leaf. I thought we had a little dink then. It's a blooming leaf, folks. Not ideal. Nope, he's staying on. Right, I'm going to flick this rig out away this time. See if there's anything just on the back of our feed. That's it. I'm going to hold it right over my ground bait. I'm not going to let it go through. Oh, looks perfect that now. Go on, a fishy ears. A little dink. A little buble come up then. Just past my float. Another one to the right of my float. Oh yes. Some fishies there. Another one to the left of my float. Oh, Some fizzing going on there now, folks. Yep. Go on then. We know there's fish there now. Oh yeah. It's got to go. It's got to go. Bit of encouragement. Go on then. Something large there now. Come on. Oh, look at them boobies. Yeah, boy. We knew something decent was there then, didn't we, folks? With all the bubbles. Just can't get enough of this style of fishing, me, folks. It's just amazing. But if it was on my own, I'd be welling a load of maggots so I cast this in. Because these 100% would be coming shallow. But it's only for, like, obviously today, you know what I mean? With how blooming mild it's gone. I think this is the last day of nice warm weather, and then it's going like proper cold, so hopefully, you know what I mean, these tactics will come into play even more. I think we're having a few like minuses next week. Not very happy. I don't think it's a carp, I think it's an F1. There's some big ones in here. But it just shows you this setup. Certainly with this 8 and obviously fishing light, 0.10, no lighter than 0.10 folks, but 0.10, you're just going to get absolutely everything. There's nothing you'll miss out on, even like, miss blooming netting him, even like great big ones and that, you know, great big carp, you just don't miss out on them at all. Yeah, doing well at my scooping today, aren't we, folks? We're doing well at our scooping today. Oh, he's fell out and all. But another, come here, another stunning for £2, 2 ounces. But it just shows you, doesn't it? So from that top up ball, yeah? So that's what's that fish taken? Probably 10 minutes to catch from that top up ball. But they started fizzing after sort of 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm going to put that rig down. But bearing in mind what I was saying about them smaller fish, they were straight on the feed. Obviously we've had that little roach, we've had a couple of little skimmers, we've had that bobnud rudd, and then we've had that F1. I'm fully expecting catch at least another sort of 2 or 3 F1s off that feed. It's all about understanding when to feed. You see, as soon as you top up and as soon as you put that bait in, you should be getting bites pretty instant. Yeah, even on the coldest of days, you should be seeing them little sort of pinpricks on your foot. That's why you've got to have it dotted down. As soon as you go like, I'm going to say when it's a little bit milder winter, 5 minutes, colder, 10 minutes. That's when you do your top up ball. Try it straight away, that top up ball, just to see what the response is. If it's what it normally is, it's little babby fish, that's when you know the next time you top up, you can leave it 10 or 15 minutes while you try somewhere else and then go back on your main swim on your swim where you're feeding the bowls, and then it should be about right. That's when the bigger fish will come into it. But it's all about experimenting on the day. Don't forget what I said, folks, as well about these stodgy bowls there. So like them size skimmers, them are the fish that I mean about catching them little babby stodgy bowls. So a little tiny toss pot on, put your stodgy ball in, and you usually get runs of sort of like 3 or 4 fish off one bowl, sometimes two fish, but usually if it's that size, 3 or 4 fish off one bowl. Sometimes it can be the bigger ones and you might want to feed every go in. It's all about seeing what's right on the day. But this style of fishing, folks, certainly for I like how cold it gets, it's just absolutely amazing. 100% you need 2 rigs for it though, like I've shown you. That through the watery tapered one, brilliant for seeing what's in your peg, catching or certainly getting bites. But then obviously the more positive one, cutting straight through them little babby fish, getting straight down, getting job done, that kind of thing. Don't fish too heavy. 0.10, you will land absolutely everything through the winter. Anything heavier, you're going to struggle for bites, certainly when it does go a lot colder and a lot clearer the water. 16s hooks, you can get away with big hooks, you know what I mean, because you're generally fishing like a bit of a worm head, worm tail, 10 2 or 3 pinkies, you know, double maggot and a pinky, that kind of thing. So as long as it's fine wire or finest wire hook, you'll get away with using a bigger hook. But more than that, folks, just get out and have a great time. It's just awesome, this style of fishing. You're going to catch absolutely everything. It's going to keep you nice and warm, certainly with bobby hats on. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and give the page a thumbs up, and comment in the section below what you want to see for next time, and then I'll make sure to go out and get it covered. But hope you've enjoyed this one, folks. I've certainly enjoyed it, and I'm going to carry on catching loads more fishes. Yeah!